A little flashback.
I really appreciate it. No problem.
Good morning. I am so glad you guys came. Because I thought maybe I only have 10 people here. But I am glad you all came. And I have a question for you. How many of you attended the old church? Show your hands. Okay. The new church that we are in now has been here tomorrow 40 years that it's been in service. So if you raised your hands, you've been a member of the church for about 40 years or more. So that says a lot, and I really appreciate you. I'm a newbie. I've only been here since 1986. So. The Liberty Church of Christ celebrates 150 years, and that's quite an accomplishment. Not in this building, but in several buildings, but we have been in town since 1869. It was a restoration church that they were trying to create based on the New Testament, and it was a new ideal in Liberty. When Henry R. Pritchard first attempted to establish a church in the 1860s, the restoration movement was eyed with suspicion by older established churches, and historians refer to the church as that it rejected infant baptism, it upheld adult conversion and immersion, had no creed, or as being a sect. We were one of those churches. And when Pritchard proposed to establish a Church of Christ, he wanted it was to be founded on the Bible alone and without doctrine, denomination, or creed, and each church was to have the right of self-government. And you don't know how many times I had discussions with my mother-in-law, who was a Presbyterian, about what do you mean you make your own decisions? So, but that's another story.
It has its drawbacks.
The church was actually organized in September of 1869 with 23 charter members by Amos Barrett, assisted by Knowles Shaw. The congregation purchased the old Lutheran church on the east side of Market Street, now a parking lot, for its own house of worship. In 1893, the Presbyterian church at the corner of Main and Seminary became available, and after some additions and remodeling, the Church of Christ occupied its new home in July of 1894, right out there. And it was there until 1979. Mary Brandenburg and she is the great-great-granddaughter of two of the original members of that Liberty Church. And I tried to find out if Mary had any relatives or anything around, and I was unsuccessful with that. By 1978, the congregation had outgrown the white steepled church on the corner. 2 services were held each Sunday morning, but overcrowding finally led to cracking of the building's main support beam. It was time to build a new church. The building was completed and occupied in September of 1979. Much of the interior labor was completed by church volunteers, and the old church, built in 1852, was not destroyed, but was given to Richmond native Joe Longstrom, who was an internationally renowned harpist. And it was taken apart, board by board, and numbered, and labeled, and then rebuilt on Straight Line Pike near Richmond. And in the winter, you can see the church when all the leaves are off the trees. It's up on a hill. And it was completed in 1980-81. And Mr. Longstrom died in 2003, and the church is now used as a residence. The church kept the bell, even though the new church lacked a steeple, and for 10 years, the bell cast in 1857 was back here in the foyer. And then a 35-foot tower in the east side churchyard was built and dedicated in October of 1989. And the bell remains in touch with its first home. The tower is resting on the basement of the floor of the original church. This year also marks 40 years in the new church, which was dedicated November 4th, 1979. In 1991, the youth minister's position increased to full-time, and a Wednesday night youth time for elementary children was added. We've had vacation Bible schools that have drawn more than 100 kids. And so at this time, I have asked some people, members of the church, to come up and reminisce about some things. And if we have time at the end, if somebody else wants to say something, great, you can. But I'm just so glad you're here and that we get to, I mean, it's an accomplishment to have a church in the community that has been in existence for 150 years. And we have been known lots of things. Lately, they called us, oh, you know, the church behind Woodruff's. But that's all right. We don't care what they call us as long as they know that we're open to spread the gospel. So, first off, I have Carol Sweeney. First? Yeah. You can tell us what you remember. Get up.
We didn't come here till 1962. Sean just said, when did you arrive here? We didn't get here till 1962. Bob Hensley was the minister, and he made us feel very welcome. And the Christian Builders reached out to us, come and be a part of our class, and we did. And that has always been a blessing because they made us feel very at home. Cecil Soper, which was David's grandfather and Jack Soper's dad, was the teacher at the time at the Christian Builders. He took me a while to get used to. I mean, I never knew Cecil Soper.
Most of the Sopers are that way.
Well, I had an experience with him right off of the bat, which was kind of unusual. Of course, back then, all we had was King James. And everybody carried a King James Bible, and I had one too. But I had a paraphrased Bible, and one Sunday I took it with me to class, and he asked me to read. And when I read out of that, I thought he was going to lose his mind. I thought it was an unpardonable sin. I've never been told before you can't bring a certain Bible to church, and I've never been told since. But that was my experience with Cecil. I learned to love him. I loved him and Ethel. There was no problem out of that. I remember the stained glass windows that was in the church. There was no air conditioning, and so when in the summertime when it got hot, they'd raise those windows. And of course we didn't have the traffic then as we have now because the lake wasn't in yet. But you went on Sunday night, you went early because you wanted to sit by a window where there was air coming in. So that was our experience with that. And there was no microphones, but I don't remember of having a trouble hearing in there. Now, of course, I probably had better hearing then than I do now, but I don't remember ever not being able to hear. We had a choir, and we sang quite often. We had different ones, Sandy Joe, and I don't remember everybody that had done it, but we had a lot of people that volunteered. That was fun, though. We always had a good time. And the younger kids, they met in the basement for Sunday school, and we had an opening exercise where they learned their Bible courses, where we learned to sing This Little Light of Mine and all those little courses that they learned. And then we had announcement time. Then they would be moved to their classes after we had their opening exercise. And then when class was over, they come back upstairs and sit with your parents. There was no junior church at that time. I mean, nothing, you just had to take care of your kids. So after that, we built a nursery. We had a nursery started. I got tired of biting kids during the day. Like, I remember the bells, and hung on the belfry, and I was always glad when they rang it, but half the time it didn't work. Either the rope was broke, or the bell wasn't working, or there was always a problem. But once in a great while, they would ring it, and it was always fun when they did. And then we had wooden pews, and no carpet on the floor. It was wooden floor. I gotta throw a little funny thing in here. Every church has a petty problem. And I remember when Gerald Badd was here, and Edmund and Lacey Harrison were the janitors, and somebody bought a new doormat. And there was a big argument whether the doormat would be in the office or on the outside of the office door. I don't remember which way it went. I don't remember where they left it. But I always thought that was funny. You argue where you don't put a doormat. On the 5th Sunday of every month, we would have fellowship, have a pitch-in meal. We done it in the evening. And then we always had a special kind of entertainment. We didn't have a church service. We just had something special going on. So in May of 1971, when Bob Mahan came to be our minister, we done This Is Your Life. Remember the show on TV, This Is Your Life? That's what we copied after, was This Is Your Life. It was a lot of work, and we put a lot of time in it, but it was a lot of fun. And we started out that evening telling him we were going to have a talent show. So we had, let's see, I wrote down here, Betty Ashcraft and Bill Ashcraft and Bob Mahan and Patty Mitchum. They sang a duet, a quartet, and that was the opening. We told him we was having a talent show, see. Then Dick Finch, he was our master of ceremonies, and then he started introducing people that had come far and wide. They came from Georgia, Illinois. We had a lot of people, and we stored them in people's homes till it was time for the program that night, because we was very glad to see them. So they stayed in different members' homes till it was time for the entertainment. Let's see. And he was very surprised, and it was a lot of fun, even though it was a lot of work. Then another time we had one for Keith Denbath. He was our youth minister, and one of his brothers just loved it, because he told some wild tales on him. I won't tell you what they were, but they were. Then when Ned Noble came, he was full of energy and all kinds of ideas. And him and Bill Ashcraft, they teamed up and started the bus ministry. And Bill's going to tell you about that. But several members would go calling on Saturday and invite kids to come to church on the bus, and that meant more classroom space. And the church had bought a house that sat back by the railroad, not the Mitch's house, but there was another house there. And the church had bought that, so we used that for classrooms, because we didn't have enough classrooms in the church building when we started having junior church. Then we had a couple that came from Centerville. Joanne Rainey, it is now, her and her husband. They came, Worley was her other name. They came from Centerville down and helped us get junior church started. She would lead the singing, and he'd done the lesson time, and so that kind of got us going with our junior church. Then we decided we'd have a live nativity at Christmas time, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of work, asked Bonnie. Dick was our announcer. We put a speaker in the window, and Dick was set in the church building, and he would read the story, and we would act it out. And I tried to think of everybody was in it, but I couldn't remember. But anyway, I wanted to tell you about a donkey. We had a donkey. There was a man who lived out in the country, and he had a donkey we could use. So they brought him in. Well, Ed and Lacey had a barn, and so we kept the donkey down in the barn, because we'd done it like 2 different nights, right? And we'd done it like 2 different times in the same evening. So we needed a break, and place to put the donkey till the next day. We can cross railroad tracks. Had enough time getting to go across railroad. And to pull him across, he would go. And they called him Charlie. And one of the boys said, "Charlie's going to church?" Oh, dear, that was it. We had sheep, and I think one time we even had a calf, and maybe a young calf. I don't remember what all we had. That's been a long time ago, guys. It was a lot of work, and we froze to death because it was always cold. But we'd take a break and go inside the church and have cookies and hot chocolate and warm up. Then we'd go back out, and we always had a crowd. They'd pull up in their cars out along the curb and sit in the cars and watch the show, or they'd get out of the car, they'd come stand along the sidewalk and watch. So it was a lot of fun. Then I remember we had singing groups that would come from CBC, Cincinnati Bible College, and sometimes there'd be a group of them, and they would just come on Sunday morning and sing. Or sometimes it would be quartets, or maybe 6 or 8, I mean a group, just a small group. And our kids loved it, because they would bring games, they'd play things, they'd come on Saturday afternoon, and then they'd stay in members' homes that night. But they would entertain the youth on Saturday afternoon. I know our kids, they made a lot of friendships that way. And they stayed all night then that night in members' homes. And so it was, like I said, a lot of friendships were made. And then Linda wanted me to talk about when we moved to this building, but all I remember is we gathered as a group. I may be wrong about this, you'll have to help me. We gathered as a group at the old church, and then we walked down the sidewalk and came in those doors. Cheryl was playing the organ, and Christy, our daughter, was playing the piano, but nobody remembers what the song was they were playing. I don't know either.
In a newspaper article, it said, "Onward Christian Soldiers."
Oh, did it? I didn't think that would do it. Maybe that's where I got the idea. I don't know. But anyway, so many memories. I mean, they got other things they can tell you I never even thought about. But it was a great time. Something we'll never forget. Hopefully.
Sandy?
Well, I've been asked lots of times by people, how long have you been coming to this church? And my response is always, since 9 months before I saw the light of day. So, lots of things in the old building that I remember. I remember the revivals we used to have, and when we had a revival in those days, it lasted 2 weeks, every night, and it was like 2 hours a night. And they would assign different people, like one night they would say all the elders are responsible for fill a pew. Another night it would be the deacons. Another night it would be a certain Sunday school class. But everybody was asked to invite people to fill your pew, so the place would be full. And one of the most important events in my life, probably the most important event in my life, was at the end of one of those revivals. I was baptized when I was 8 years old in that church. At the end of a revival, and the night I was baptized, there were 18 of us. It was a really good night. And another one of the most important events in my life took place in that old church. That was my wedding day. We had Sunday night church at that time, and I wanted to be married on Sunday night. So I had to go before the board of elders and ask them, since everybody in the church will be invited to my wedding, can we have my wedding instead of church that night? So I had permission to get married in church on Sunday night. And our old church building toward the front, I mean right up where the brides and the grooms and all those people stood, there was a big register where the heat came up. Every girl got married thought, please don't drop the ring. Because the register was right there. You drop the ring, well, so long for that. I remember the communion table is our one from the old building. Out on as you came in, there were the collection plates, the communion cups. We have one of the old benches, the pulpit. Many of the things from the old church are still here, and we look at them on a regular basis. When I think of the communion cups, at that time, they were glass. And my mom always took the communion things home to wash. I can't tell you how many times, how long it takes to wash 100 little glass communion cups, sterilize them in boiling water, be sure and bring them back. My mom also was the treasurer for many years. And at that time, if we got $100 a week, that was big time. There was no such thing as a drop box at the bank. So you took the money home. You had to keep it until Monday to get it to the bank. Well, my mom was always afraid something's going to happen to the money. So we had to wait until after Sunday night because we took up a collection on Sunday night as well. So after Sunday night, you go to the kitchen, the curtains were all pulled, so we could count the money and put the nickels in the nickel slots and the pennies in the wrappers and all that. And then Mom would always decide, I have to put it someplace, I have to hide this money because somebody could break in and steal it. So Mom was always hunting a different place to put the money. And sometimes it would be in the freezer. Sometimes it'd be in the linen closet. Sometimes it'd be in a cookie jar. Sometimes it'd even be in the washing machine. And I used to tell Mom, someday, Mom, you're going to get arrested for money laundering because you washed the money. So those are things I remember. And on Sunday morning, we had a doxology. Every Sunday after they took up the offering, when they brought their offering forward, they sang the doxology. I don't know how long it's been since we've used that, but it was every Sunday then. We also had a birthday offering every week. Dave tells us now at the end of the service who's had a birthday that day. But then, if you'd had a birthday through the week, you came forward on Sunday morning and the little kids put their money in some kind of a little tray or a bank or something. So we had a happy birthday every day. Let's see. Linda told you about when the church was moved, when Joe Longstreth bought the church, moved it to Richmond, and set it on a hill. The people who now live in that church, our old church, are friends of mine. I worked with him at Alcoa. He's about 6'9", and he said that his brother was looking at a property on that road, Straight Line Pike, and they wanted them to see the house. So Kyle and Amy, his wife, went with them. And the realtor, of course, is a realtor, always trying to sell something. And so she said, you guys should look at this building that's for sale. And he said, I had no interest in looking at that building. But she convinced us that we should do that. And so they went into the church. And I looked at him and I said, and Amy fell in love. And he said, no, I fell in love. It was the first building I ever been into that I didn't have to duck my head to go through the doors. They had it, he came to me, I tried to think when, I don't know how many years ago it's been, but he came to me one day and he asked me if I would be out that weekend. I said, I don't know why, and he said, well, you should be. And I said, why is that? And he said the church, the steeple will be lighted this weekend for the last time. And it leaked around where the steeple fit down onto the rest of the building. It was leaking. And he had tried and tried and tried to get it fixed. They'd done many things to it. He was an engineer, is an engineer. He tried many things to get it fixed. It still leaked. So he said the steeple was going to have to come down. And he said this weekend we'll have it lit for the final time. And I don't know where the steeple is now. At the time, he asked if we wanted it back. I said probably not. But he was going to try to store it somewhere. But I don't know where it is now. But he's like 6'9", and he loved the high ceilings and the things. We used to have Halloween parties for the kids in the basement of the old church. We'd have the haunted house, and we'd have in the furnace room, we used to have the laid out mummies and all that stuff. So we did all those things. And I guess that's pretty much all the things I can think of. But like I said, two of the most important events in my life took place in that old building. My baptism and my marriage. And so it'll always be important to me.
Bill, let's talk bus ministry.
When I go to my daughter's house, on the refrigerator it says, think before you speak. And the T, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Or is it necessary? And the last, in the think, is it kind? Well, I'll read some scripture because I think that might be the only thing that's true. Peter says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. I don't like to call names. If you do, you'll miss somebody. I was a bus mechanic. I mean, and Ned Noble started it, and I don't know where he had permission from Elder or not, but he did. The first bus they bought, it cost the church $800 to paint it. And
He painted all of it.
and the next 3 buses, guess what? Oh well. Did you ever try to wet sand the school bus? It's not easy. Bill Ashcraft, he worked day and night supporting the bus ministry. He also had a partner. Now, his last name was Murphy, and I'm not sure of the first name. Was it Ralph? Okay. And this spray gun came from Richmond by a guy named Curley. Now, I don't know his name, but he taught us how to paint buses. We used more body putty. We put newspaper in behind the headlights and fill it up with body putty. Then we'd paint them. Every Saturday, I was at the church here making sure them buses run. Now, this has been 50 years ago, and I enjoyed it. And Curly, he'd give this spray gun to us. It's probably the church's, but I got it. Walt Kramer. I don't know how many in here know Walt Kramer. He lived out here on 27th, and he had a daughter. What was her name? Katie? Oh, anyway, she come with the bus ministry. So Walt Kramer said, if you need any help with mechanics, I'll help you. And that guy had a gift of gab. He could do anything and he could fix anything. So I spent a lot of time with Walt Kramer. But Walt was the kind of guy said, give him 10 minutes and he could go to any family gathering, and 90% of the people in that family didn't know he didn't belong to them. So he had a gift of gab. And they've already mentioned Ivan Worley, the one that helped. Mike Stewart was a youth minister, and he drove one of the buses. And he always accused me that I said, the wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the most grease. So he didn't like the way the bus was run one day, so he said, would you fix my bus? And so I told him, now I don't remember it, but he said that I found his shoestrings in the carburetor. So he must have been a hot rod. And these buses were all gear shift. And I told him if you had trouble shifting them, you double clutched it. And they told me, you're not kidding me, one of them's a brake. Okay. So,
How many buses?
well, in my pocket, there was 4 and possibly 5, and I don't remember for sure, but positive there was 4.
There
Okay.
were 6.
So,
From the corner, there were 6 buses when Ivan and I came down.
there was,
There were 6 buses.
okay, but this has been 50 years ago. Okay, but I'll leave you with this. WWWPPW. What's that mean? We worship our word, we work at play, and we play at worship. So, that's all I've got to say.
Cheryl Thomas.
When Linda asked me last week to do this, I went back and sat down and I said to Bonnie, am I the oldest one? I mean, who's been here the longest? And she was like, I think Jack Soper has been, but I'm 71 and I've been here since I was born. So my life's been spent here, and like I said, that's 71 and a half years. So my father was the Sunday school teacher to the young married class. I remember that vividly, because now they're the Christian Builders class, and you know how old they are now. I try to remember some things. VBS lasted 2 full weeks. I can remember, and this is even when we were in the new church, we went 1 week and then we had to put everything back someplace because then they had Sunday school on Sunday. So it went 2 full weeks, and we always had a closing program and all that. Fellowship dinners in the old church, fellowship dinners and wedding receptions were in the basement of the education building, and that's where my reception was when I got married. I put in something about the beam. Everybody talks about the beam breaking, but I can remember they said we couldn't go back in the basement after that, right? I mean, and I don't remember how long before we built a new church did that happen, you know? Huh? Yeah, it was quite a thing. Another story I have happened 37 and a half years ago at VBS, and a lot of people know about this, but I was over here with my 2 other kids, and I didn't teach because I was 9 months pregnant. And I didn't teach, and so I was sitting here, labor pain started, and I started walking around because we had no cell phones. I couldn't get a hold of Jim. And I walked and I paced, and I remember Pam Tharp, wherever she is, she's like, sit down, you know. And finally got a hold of him, and he went out and finally got a hold of him.
He got here in 11 minutes.
Yeah. And he got here 20 after 8. We got to Oxford at 20 to 9, and Jeff was born at 9:03. And I remember they were back there, the ladies were back there boiling water.
You wanted to go home first.
I did. I did. Pam had talked me out of that too. I was going to go home, back home to Connersville, and you know, and get him and come. But anyway, music has been a big part of my life. We had a piano and organ. One day the organ kind of pooped out. So, but I remember Ruby Pooter. I don't know whether people remember Ruby. And then after that, did Deborah play or just Patty? Well, that's what I thought somebody said Deborah played, but Patty, her daughter, played, and then she was killed in a car accident in '69, and I started playing then. So another thing, I remember the nativity scene, or not nativity scene, but the Christmas tree that we had. Does anybody remember that? Roger Apsley built a Christmas tree, and there's a picture back here, and all the youth were in there singing and everything. That was kind of cool. I was just thinking of people, and I don't know, we were talking, Clem Michaels. I don't know whether people remember Clem. What was his wife's name? Ruth. Okay. I remember Hosey Samuels, and we were trying to remember what Hosey's wife's name was, and because my mom always just called her Mrs. Samuels. Edith Shoemaker. Cecil Soper. I loved his prayers. I thought he had the most beautiful prayers. Lacey Harrison, loved his bass voice. People may not know this, but Bob Jenkins, who was the voice of the 500 for years, and Bob went to church here. So, and of course, Bill and Betty Ashcraft. So, and Harold and Margaret Sheets. But that's about it. I have a lot of memories, so thank you.
Bonnie Finch. I'll make mine short. I think everything's been about said. But I remember the old church very, very well because I was married in it in 53. I was baptized in 56. And Dick, my husband, was baptized in sometime in 1940. I don't know if he was in that group that you were in or not. But some of the things that my husband remembered, he had told me in the old church where the choir loft was, if anybody knew that, there used to be a sandbox in it so the little kids could play. Do you remember that? And Mrs. Samuels, that someone was just talking about, she was the leader, and she had the little ones. Evidently, Dick must have played in that sandbox. So that was, and another thing that kind of happened in the old church, the floor slanted towards the front, and it was in just two sections, I think. 2 aisles. And this mother would always bring her 2 small children. And one was a boy about 3 or 4. And he got tired of sitting because there was no nursery. And so he decided he was going to try out that slanted floor. And he rolled under the pews all the way down to where the piano was. I don't remember how somebody stopped him, but evidently he'd been wanting to do that for a long time. I don't know how he parted the seas. And then the church bell that somebody talked about, I think we had a competition with the Methodist Church. When we were ringing our bells, they were playing their chimes. So you could always hear that there was a church going on someplace. And we had great revivals. I remember one revival where we had about 4 men, and they were good singers, and they were big men. And one day they decided they were going to move that piano out on the porch. Remember, our church had a porch? They moved that piano out on that porch, and I think it must have been 4th of July celebration, and they sang their hearts out in that porch, and we had people coming across the street to hear it. And that was a big job because that piano was not light. And yes, I'm not going to forget you, girl. There wasn't anything really for the teenagers to do in our church, in the old church. So when Ned Noble was here, we talked to him and said, what can we do? Debbie Collette and I said, let's do something to get these junior high and high school involved in something. So I said, I don't know. I can't play the piano very good. Debbie, you can. I said, I've never led music, but we're going to have to rely on the Lord to lead us in what we're supposed to do. So we thought, well, let's try and see if we'll get anybody of the kids that want to come. Of course, I had 3 boys, and they already had kind of told me that, don't get us involved, Mom. And so we started out asking if they'd like to sing some songs, and we thought we'd just sing a few songs for church. And we ended up with 20 kids that were coming regular to practice and to sing. And what we did, we put on programs. We did the first one, I think my boy Todd preached a little bit. You sang songs. We had scripture, maybe some testimonies. And then we decided we got to go farther than this. We practiced so long on these programs. So we asked one of the bus drivers, I don't know, Bill, if you got to drive the bus. Dick did once. He wasn't too happy about it, but he did. And we went to Greenwood Church, and we put on a program. We went to Brookville because Debbie Collette's father was there, and we didn't expect any money. We just wanted to sing these songs and put on the program. And we had several churches to go to. And there was, wasn't there about 20? There was probably about 6 boys, and the rest were girls. 2 of them are here. I don't know if there's any others. And the group was called the Young Believers, and how we came by that name, there was a boy, he probably was junior high, and I asked him, I said, do you have any idea what you want to be called? And nobody said anything, and he hadn't been coming very long. He came up with a word. He said, how about Young Believers? We thought that was great, because they were young, and they were young believers. So that stuck with them. And 2 girls told me when I came down here, now don't tell things bad about us. I think the tables have turned. I think it was more about what Bonnie did and Debbie did to turn them off.
Well, we had them into yours a time or 2 because we wouldn't be oh, we had a good time. We had fun.
They enjoyed going to other churches. Remember when we went to Mike Stewart's church and stayed overnight in his small house? I think you guys slept on sleeping bags down in the room, the living room or something. But he wanted us to go over and give the program for the church, so we went on a Saturday night. Well, it was our anniversary, and the kids found out about it, and they got their money together, and they reserved a place for us to go eat without kids. And it was so nice of them. So we had a good time, and really, after that, I think Ashley started things with the kids. Didn't you go on trips on the bus? On their motorhome, yeah. And so, and I'm not sure, you went different places. Do you remember where you went? That's what I was thinking. Washington, D.C., they took several to go. So, but they were a swell group. I didn't have any trouble with them, really, I didn't. Maybe sometimes they didn't want to work and practice these songs, but I depended on Christy because we went to tapes instead of piano. I was lost. She helped me. So it was great. The only other thing I have is about Christian Builders class. I'll go back to that. We started about 60 years ago. And our first teacher was Paul Finch, and Cheryl's father. And he passed away when he was 50. And that's where the piano came from, was a dedication to Paul. A Christian Builders class bought the piano. And then after Paul, I think Cecil came then, and he was a little different to get used to. I was shy then, you never believe it now, but I was shy then. And Cecil, I got real brave and asked him a question. I'm glad his son isn't quite like that. Ask him a question, and what did you get? You got a question back. Oh my, I can't answer that. So I was careful not to ask him any more questions. So, but we had a growing Sunday school class, and the reason we called it the Young Believers, that we were having several kids, and we would have class meetings once a month in somebody's home. Well, that had to stop because we had so many kids. And now we still got Christian Builders class, maybe not kids, but we are getting some younger ones in our class, and we're glad to have them. So we're having about 25 in our class now. So that's about all I have.
Thank you, Bonnie. That is all I have. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Okay, I do have one more thing. The bell out here today between Sunday school and church, listen. Mark Bell and Nick Tharp have, the bell is working. So it's going to ring. So that's an amazing thing, and we're very excited about that because 150 years and the bell's going to ring. Yep, Nick?
We owe the people that went before us.
Oh, yes, yes. There are...
Beyond what we can say, beyond what we can count. But that front row right there is pretty important. And
Right.
people that
And there are several that didn't tell stories, or that we don't know the stories. And if you have history on the church, old pictures, whatever, bring it to me. We want to, put it in some kind of CD or something that we can share to the younger kids coming up. But we do have a legacy. I mean, it's amazing what this church has done. I mean, we have Habitat. We do Habitat since 2006, I believe. We've gone to Haiti. Vacation Bible School is amazing. I mean, we're crazy at Vacation Bible School, and we keep thinking, why are we doing that? But we get the kids in, and they're excited. And we have the only full-time youth minister in Liberty.
Is
And-
Mark Bell in here?
He's out in there.
He's out greeting out back.
We'll let him ring the bell first.
Who?
Mark.
Okay.
And we're going to go outside if you want to go out. And do it.
Okay, great. All right, I'm done here. Yes.
I just want to say one more thing, because she's not going to take any praise for herself, but Linda has worked really, really, really hard to make today happen, and I think you're all
Okay, I don't know how chilly it is or what, but if you want to go that direction and listen to the bell. Thank you.
They're ringing the bell. Son gets to start younger.
So that would have been